Boy, get ready, ladies and gentlemen, for one of the videos of the age because I got a lot to say and I'm fucking pissed off. Sometimes I'll get co 9/11 researcher Sean Russell to sometimes say, I like when he goes off because I go off the cuff on the subject of 9/11 and it's really like a deep discussion and just, no filter, right? Last night, could be at a tipsy. And if you follow my social media, you know I was going off on President Trump meeting with a notable international terrorist, Ahmed al-Shara, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, the de facto emir of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is al-Qaeda in Syria. He was in the White House. I'm 55. I'll be 56 next month. Never would I've ever imagined that at any point in my lifetime would I ever see Al Qaeda in the fucking White House. An Islamic fundamentalist is in the White House, well, was in the White House. And there's so many defenders to this. Now, this is not a video based on that. This is a video based on the United States and their allies and how they affect the world, right? And this is not something I can explain in 30 minutes. This is probably going to be like an hour and a half. I mean, this is going to be one of those videos, man. And I'm definitely not going to be fucking boring in this one. So get the popcorn ready because I'm really just going to fucking blast everybody right off the bat. Now, I'm also pissed off at a number of things. This year has been like one of those years, like, you know what, man? I don't know. Ever since COVID, you know me, I'm not an exaggerator. I don't go off the cuff. I'm straight to the point. It's the reason why hardly anyone follows me. I'm boring. I use Movie Maker, to edit my videos and stuff. I'm not a very good editor. I'm not a filmmaker, you know, but at the same time, I try to inform people. When I first made this channel, when I first made viral media, I always wanted to be the person that just sets the record straight. I inform the public about what's going on, mainly 9/11, but also expanded to, the current times. And I do it without prejudice and bias. You'll hear me say that often. And I mean it because when I first started studying 9/11 and studying about, you know, US foreign policy, all of these things, right? I noticed that by watching TV, we never really get the full picture. So in 2009, I stopped watching TV. I still haven't watched TV. I don't watch sports anymore. I think they're interfering with the really important issues and with knowledge about things, specifically the real world. You lose your innocence, the ignorance, right? You lose it forever. There is no turning back. And I'm not saying I'm more knowledgeable about the next person. I just, obtain information about certain things. Now, I try to give it to you straight. I'm not persuaded by ideology or by human constructs. And I think of myself as a higher being. I'm an atheist to the Abrahamic gods. I do believe that there is a higher plane of existence, or if you want to call it God, that exists in the universe. I do not believe in the concept of heaven and hell. I think that's ridiculous, right? I don't know what happens after that. I don't care. We're not supposed to know. We're supposed to worry about right now. Now, I don't know what happened after COVID, but it seems everybody lost their fucking minds. I have never seen anywhere in my lifetime the amount of ignorance, the celebration of self debasement, this appreciation for putting in a lack of effort and expecting maximum benefit, greed, bloodlust for power. We are more violent than fucking ever. The irrationality has led to more irrationality. This whole extremist mindset is not, you know, at its peak yet, but we're close. The racism is through the roof, and we are dwindling into tribalism. I cannot be the only one who is seeing this after the COVID era. I don't know what it. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was isolation. Maybe it was, you know, the effects of mandates that are too oppressive. Maybe it was the complete lack of respect for authority. Maybe it was a combination of all these things. The constant state of being sick, being paranoid. Now with the economic boom that we're having, which is having a universal, a, just a deliberating effect on the human consciousness. Beta male, alpha male, tough. Are you a man? Are you a woman? Are you Christian? Are you Jew? Are you black? Are you white? Do you vote? Do you not vote? Do you care? Do you not care? You're at war with one another. This like psychological manipulation for your mind, which is the final frontier. But I don't want to get lost in this. The point of the video is the United States and their allied partners. Now, last night, I was on the computer for hours. I barely slept. I had to get up for work. I went to bed like around 2 in the morning, woke up like around 5:15, and I was just, I cannot believe it. Yeah, we have an Islamic fundamentalist in the White House, embraced warmly. And, the Trump supporters that demonized just days ago Zohan Mamdani because he's a socialist Shia Muslim, the amount of vitriol that guy got just for being a Muslim, not even just being a socialist, but for being Muslim, was that he's a terrorist. He's going to enact Sharia law in New York City, and thousands of people are going to flee the city. In 2 days' time, your man basically had an actual terrorist in the White House. And what did I hear? Jack shit, right? So these videos that I'm doing in this playlist is me really giving you my fucking 2 cents. I'm going to be very opinionated. I'm also going to be very relaxed in my speculations. I'm going to be, but not, crazy. But I'm also going to speak about, the facts of the case. But I'm going to give it to you straight. Now, I don't know everything. I don't even know. I know this much, maybe this much about anything. I happen to think like maybe sometimes I'm just like an imbecile. I don't know what I'm talking about. Right? Am I having an effect or not? Does this matter? But I've always believed in that, the people deserve to have better representation about what's going on around them. And that's why I opened this channel. Now, last night, Ahmed al-Shara, also known by his nom de guerre, Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, who is the current president of Syria, self-appointed, and he previously served as the emir of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, in which he still is. He just won't publicly admit it. Now, this guy, a little bit of a background, was born in Saudi Arabia. Shocker. We're going to talk about that in a minute, right? About what Saudi Arabia really is. He's a Syrian Sunni Muslim from the families from the Golan Heights. He grew up in Damascus. And in short time, Jilani joined Al Qaeda in Iraq shortly before the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003. fought for 3 years in the Iraqi insurgency. He was not a soldier, as Charles Landis would like you to think, or Charles Lister and James Landis would like you to think. He's a terrorist, and U.S. forces had captured this guy, and he was in prison for 5 years. He then was released and joined the Syrian Revolution, which was against the Ba'athist dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad, who was fighting against the Sunni Muslims, along with Lebanon and Iran. Later on, al-Shara created the al-Nusra Front, also known as Jabhat al-Nusra, which is, in essence, a Salafi jihadist organization that fought against the Ba'athist regime forces in the Syrian civil war against Assad. But they also wanted to establish an Islamic state ruled by Sharia law, which, by the way, is not coincidental to the Quran. To you ignorant evangelical fuckers out there, you groypers, you racists, who think that Islam is about dominating the world through Sharia law, you're fucking wrong. Okay, if that was always the case, we would constantly be at war with Islam, and we're not, because 95% of Muslims in the world are not at war with Christians. And it's funny because some of you hypocrite motherfuckers, you basically are just like these Islamic fundamentalists. You want a caliphate here in the United States. You want to be run by religious doctrine to the Bible. You want women to have less rights and to keep silent. You don't want them to vote. You want a pro-reactive war with any ideology, whether it be atheism, whether it be Islam, right? Communism, socialism. You're not Christians by any means whatsoever. You're hypocrites. Now, he created Jabhat al-Nusra in 2012. By the way, all with the support of al-Qaeda under Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, who in just a year prior to that, Zawahiri told Ahmed al-Shara to open up an al-Qaeda branch with the full support of al-Qaeda, and he did. Now, while he was emir of the al-Nusra Front, al-Shara built a stronghold in the Idlib government. And by doing so, he actually resisted Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was the leader of the Islamic State, to merge al-Nusra with the Islamic State, because al-Shara had a strong faction. This actually led to an armed conflict between the two groups. And in 2016, there was a number of letters between members of the Islamic State and letters from Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri to stop the fighting. But in 2016, al-Shara cut off ties with al-Qaeda because al-Shara, Zawahiri wanted them to merge because Zawahiri's al-Qaeda was weakened. Remember, in 2011, bin Laden is killed, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is captured, Ramzi bin al-Shib is captured, Mohammed Atef, the military commander, is killed, Suleiman Abu Ghait is arrested. Almost the entire top leadership is gone. Saif al-Adil is, under house arrest in Iran. So a lot of the hierarchy is done. So Zawahiri saw an ally in Shara, and Shara says no, because he basically saw that al-Qaeda under Zawahiri was basically going to die off anyway because they had no power. And since breaking away with al-Qaeda under Zawahiri, he sought international legitimacy, because what they wanted to do was basically had this branch of Al Qaeda outside of Zawahiri exist in Syria. Remember, another thing too. He didn't renounce Al Qaeda. He took bayat, which is a loyalty oath to Al Qaeda. He didn't break the oath. He never went on tape, never went on air and said, I cut off all ties. I'm no longer Al Qaeda. He never said that. He cut off ties with Al Qaeda under Zawahiri because what he wanted was a state. Because he's going by the edicts of bin Laden. And bin Laden said that we are to fight two wars. And by the way, it was the founder of what I'm about to say of these two conflicts, which is the near enemy and far enemy approach. And this was an edict by Muhammad ibn al-Faraj, who was involved with the Sadat assassination, right? Egyptian President Sadat. And he wrote a book called The Neglected Duty, where he wrote about how the Egyptian Islamists in Gamma Islamiyah and Al Jihad, which later was renamed to Egyptian Islamic Jihad, was to basically overthrow socialist governments, socialist Arab governments, and replace them with Islamist governments. And in time, one country after another, as they're being defeated, which would take a long time, then you would have a caliphate. And only then can you fight against the West, the United States and Israel, the far enemy. Al-Shara took that and said, I will start the caliphate that Bakr al-Baghdadi cannot do through my group. And he sought legitimacy by presenting a more moderate view of himself, because he will never be accepted if he basically, is a fucking jihadist. That means, yeah, I'll keep the beard. And by the way, that's another fucking hint. He still has the beard. If he wanted legitimacy, if he broke off with his terrorist, leanings, he would shave the beard. To all you people that think he's reformed, you're fucking stupid. Now, what he did was he renounced transnational jihadism against the West, because I can't have legitimacy if we're fighting against the West. That was the error that bin Laden did, as well as al-Zawahiri did. They want the far enemy war, which was a mistake, because they don't have an army. So al-Shara merged with al-Nusra and other Islamist organizations in 2017. Now, fast forward to what's going on now, right? The United States, Turkey, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates are all interested for different reasons in the region of Syria, Iran, Lebanon, right? And the CIA back in 2012 created a program. And this program was a classified weapons training program run by the CIA, created by General David Petraeus, who was the DCI at the time, and called this program Timber Sycamore. The ultimate aim of the program was to remove Bashar al-Assad from power by aiding and abetting Islamist groups with money, weapons, and training. They then rebranded the jihadist groups to Syrian opposition groups. Remember what Islamists were called in 1979? Freedom fighters. The weapons that were given through the Saudis ultimately ended up in the hands of other extremist groups, including, you guessed it, Al Qaeda, which contributed to the rise of the Islamic State in, I think it was 2014 or 2015. And by the way, all you have to do is take a look at the videos of ISIS in 2014 and 2015, and they're driving brand new fucking Toyota trucks straight off the fucking factory floor. According to U.S. officials that will come out later on, right? The program was run by the CIA's own Special Activities Division, which personally trained thousands of these Islamists in Syria. Now, I remember that period because on Twitter, I didn't have an account on Twitter, but I would see Twitter and I would see soldiers. I'll never forget this. Soldiers with signs that they would put up saying, I didn't agree to fight with the Islamists. Weren't we fighting the war on terror? Now, who authorized this? President Obama. That's who. You progressives, right, think that this guy, because he's so handsome, he's so soft spoken, because he has a beautiful family, he's a mass murderer, he's a piece of shit. He authorized this program with the full approval of Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Okay. The New York Times broke the story in mid like 2016, and the program became public knowledge. Now, while that was happening, right, these weapons went into the hands of who? Hayat Tahrir under Jabhat al-Nusra. Ahmed al-Shah grew even bigger. Now, another consequence of the program has been a flood of U.S. weapons, including assault rifles, like mortars and like RPGs, which are, what are they, rocket propelled grenades. And it went right into the Middle East black market. Years later, many years later, all the billions of dollars we spent in weapons to Ukraine, where did that go? Well, according to Bloomberg magazine, a lot of it went to the black market. So in essence, with all the billions that we left behind in Afghanistan, with all the weapons that we left that went through the black market in Ukraine, with all the millions of dollars in weapons through timber sycamore that went to the black market, went to Islamist groups, right-wing Islamic ultra-Orthodox groups. So now we have entire Islamist armies backed by U.S. weapons abroad for the last, what, fucking 15 years. Okay. Now, with, Ahmed al-Shara, by the way, again, in 2024, took over the country of Syria. Assad is gone. The timber sycamore program was ended in 2020, I think, under Trump's first term. Gone. One of the good things that Trump did, one of the few good things he did, right? But it was a relative success because the weapons got into the hands of many of these Islamist groups, flooded the market, flooded by the way, at the same time, you had an Arab Spring, you had the continual bombing of Libya and Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan, Gaza, right? An assault that was never ending under the Bush and Obama administrations and the first Trump administration, because nobody had more drone strikes than Trump in his first administration. So you have the systematic bombing and you're creating what? Disenfranchised families. The prisons are released in Syria, in Jordan, in Iraq, and all these Sunni extremists are now escaping. You have honest families destroyed. The men have to go and try to find, the means to keep their, whatever's left alive of their family. So where are they going? They're flooding Europe and the United States, the very countries that were involved in disenfranchising them to begin with. The progressive leaderships in those during that time allowed for this to happen because they said, well, we should help them because the previous right-wing administrations have caused their suffering. But at the same time, what you're doing is basically helping some of them, but some of them don't give a fuck about your help and want to enact revenge. Right? This is without trying to sound prejudice. To all you people who are against immigration, it's the wrong position. Yes, I agree. We should have better, stricter security measures, specifically northern border of Canada near British Columbia, all the way down to Texas. I agree. But at the same time, immigration is a plus. New ideas, new methods. The world's a big place. I'm not a racist. I think it's stupid to hate somebody because they're a different culture or of a different skin color. I mean, you really have to be like retarded beyond belief to hate somebody because they have tan skin. I think racism out of everything, even worse than flat earth, is the stupidest thing that you could hate somebody on. I never I'm so glad like I never like was a racist because I was born poor and I got along with, you know, people of darker skin. I don't believe in a white black. Like just I think that's so stupid. Anyway, nevertheless. All right, that's what's going on with Syria. Then you have a fucking nightmare in Afghanistan. And this is like we just had a 20-year war that just did nothing. The State Department under Bush administration, under the Obama administration, specifically Obama, kept the Pentagon's hands tied when it came to really, you know, really maximizing the the armies, the Department of Defense power in that country. Now, at the same time, no foreign power ever beat the Afghans. It's called the graveyard of empires for a reason, right? So, like, we had the Taliban on the ropes in the Battle of Tora Bora. We didn't get it done. We could have killed bin Laden then. We didn't get it done. So here you have the Taliban now taking over the country in 2022. And with that came the Doha agreements. The agreement was that, you won't allow any extremist groups to exist. You will normalize relations with the rest of the world. You will, give you will rebuild the country with a little, our help, of course, but you rebuild it with a more moderate view. And what did the Taliban do? Specifically, you know, I'm sorry, you know what the Taliban did? They said, well, we're going to be basically in the reverse, right? I mean, this is like, all right, the Taliban's leader is Haibatullah Akhundzada. I think I'm saying it wrong. My New York accent, I hate it. Right? Haibatullah Akhundzada is the group's supreme leader. He actually holds, and as a supreme leader, you have the authority over the the political, the religious, and the military affairs of the country. He became, I believe he became the supreme commander in 2015 or 2016, one of those years. So he then like appoints a number of Taliban officials in all these different areas. Um, and one individual in particular that really just um, is something to um, be noteworthy about is an individual by the name of Sirajuddin Haqqani. Now, remember this name. Sirajuddin Haqqani is the son of Jalaluddin Haqqani. Jalaluddin Haqqani was a notable Afghan warlord who created a group called the Haqqani Network. And Jalaluddin Haqqani basically was the first Afghan warlord to allow for Arabs to fight alongside the Afghans. Later on, Abdul Rasul Sayyaf was another, and Gulbuddin Hekmatyar was another. But, Jalaluddin Haqqani was the man who employed two Egyptians, Abu Hafs al-Masri and Abu Ubaidah al-Banshiri. Now, you may think, who are these guys? I never heard of them. Well, they were both one of the formal members of Al-Qaeda and the military branch. They both also were former Egyptian policemen. Ubaidah, I think, served in the military. Now, Sirajuddin Haqqani is the deputy leader of Afghanistan. He's the interior minister currently. And he's also the deputy leader of the Taliban since, I think, 2016. And he has control over much of the country's internal security forces. He actually oversaw a number of combat conflicts against American and coalition forces, specifically in Waziristan, the Waziristan district, not Waziristan, the country, but Waziristan district in Pakistan. And he's a militant through and through. He is accused by the coalition forces of carrying out bombings in Kabul, killing school children, Afghan soldiers, right? So this guy is straight up a militant. He's also allied with Al-Qaeda. Now, currently, the Taliban went completely against the Doha agreements. For those who don't know, the Doha agreements in 2020 was the Taliban's agreement with the United States that they would prevent Al-Qaeda from using Afghan soil for international terrorist attacks. And that they would seek, they would reduce visibility of Al-Qaeda. But, and I've done videos on this, there is a UN report where it states that analysts are warning the United States government that Afghanistan has become a haven for Al-Qaeda to reorganize and train, which they are doing to enable future attacks against the United States in the United States. Currently, according to Bill Roggio in the American Journal, in the American War Journal, Al-Qaeda has 12 training bases. Now, Sarah Adams and others, like I think Sean Ryan, but Sarah Adams mainly, right? And I've interviewed her, have, come out and said that, yes, there are Al-Qaeda bases, according to their context, which are backed up by Bill Roggio, which are backed up by the UN, In fact, the National Counterterrorism Center under Joe Kent was the director, published a spotlight report that basically shows that there are wishes by Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Saad al-Awlaki, who is the de facto leader of Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, came out and said that we're going to kill Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State, and the Vice President, J.D. Vance. Okay. So now you have a threat of Al Qaeda in Afghanistan training to fight the United States, inside the United States at some point in the near future. Al Qaeda's alleged de facto leader, Saif al-Adil, who I talked about before, has wrote a book called 33 Strategies of War, which he reportedly calls for foreign fighters to migrate to Afghanistan for training before targeting Western interests and cities inside the United States. So now you have Al Qaeda affiliates as well behind this. Groups like Al Shabaab in Somalia, Jamaat Nusra al Islam al Muslimin, in short, the JNIM in the fucking Sahel region of Africa, the Horas al-Din in Syria, the Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al Qaeda in Yemen, Al Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which is North Africa. All these groups are coordinating with the base of Al Qaeda in Afghanistan to become a part of this terrorist plot. Okay, so now you have Syria, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which are a terrorist organization, according to a number of human rights groups. You have Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and then you have Saudi Arabia. I don't want to hear fucking jack shit about them being moderate or that they're reforming. Fuck you. The basis of their country, from the religious aspect, is Wahhabi Islam. It is half the makeup of the country. You cannot get rid of this ideology and purge it overnight. You could subdue the influence, which is what Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, basically did. But he also is a fucking mass murderer. Now, in 2017, with, by the way, this took about a year and a half, there was a purge that people tend to forget. It was a mass arrest of people, prominent Saudis, which involved princes in the kingdom, government ministers, and business people, billionaires, in Saudi Arabia in 2017. And Crown Prince bin Salman led a committee. They called it an anti-corruption committee, but they were a committee of fucking murderers and thugs that helped centralize the political powers in the hands of the bin Salman family and undermine the pre-existing structure of the consensus-based governance among the Saudi elites called the Sudari Seven. Now, what are the Sudari Seven? You'll hear me say this from time to time. The Sudari Seven are the commonly used name for the powerful alliance of the seven full brothers within the Saudi royal family. They are the Fahd, the Sultan, the Nayef, the Abdullah, the Salman, and the Turki, and Rahman. All right. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. I think I got it wrong. The Fahd, the Sultan, the Nayab, the Abdul Rahman, the Turkey, and the Salman. That's the Sudari seven, right? What this guy did was he centralized the supremacy of his family over all the Sudari seven, over all the business elites in Saudi Arabia, and he arrested thousands of people. Now, what he this fucker did, right, was he had members of the families of the Sudari seven, all the business people that were not within the Bin Salman alliance. They were detained, confined in a hotel in Riyadh, and were subsequently not told to leave. All their finances were frozen. I think it was like over 500 people that were involved. Like, according to the New York Times, no, I'm sorry, the Wall Street Journal, there were over 2,000 Saudi accounts that were frozen as part of this crackdown. Saudi government officials aligned with the Bin Salman, criminal family, took up like 800 billion. 800 billion. This fucking maniac who wanted power, ultimate power, just fucking said, I'm going to run this family, fuck all of you, and I'm going to take your assets and I'm going to weaken you. And he took about 800 billion. And it basically said, oh, these were all corrupt people. He's a fucking liar. The name of the group behind him was a group called the Tiger Squad, which consisted of 50 Secret Service and military personnel and recruited from the different branches of the Saudi forces. People from the National Guard, the Armed Forces, and the Presidency of State Security. That's the three branches of the security forces in Saudi Arabia. Now, bin Salman took power. His father, bin Salman, was an invalid, became king, and Mohammed bin Salman became crown prince. Now, here's another thing. The United States, after 9/11, cracked down on Saudi Arabia because 16 of the 19 hijackers came from there. So the world light went on Saudi Arabia. But because the United States is allied with Saudi Arabia buys more weapons from the United States than any other country in the world. They also get price of per the barrel on a decent price, right? And so Saudi Arabia, is a big spender for the United States. So they basically said, look, we'll make sure that the FBI limits their investigation into you. We'll also basically cover up any civil suit litigation against you, which they're currently still doing. And also at the same time, they told the Saudi Arabian government, you got to crack down on the extremists because, we can't have this again. So they did for the time being. Bin Salman family went a little bit further because he's a businessman, a corrupt piece of shit businessman. But he basically said that, all right, we're going to appease not just the United States, but we're going to appease China, India, Russia, Southeast Asia, countries there, and of course, United States, Great Britain, Italy, France. But he had to be taken seriously. So he cracked down on a lot of the, adherents to these Wahhabi clerics. Some of them were arrested. And that led to the modernization of Saudi Arabia, right? The Wahhabi part of it. But they didn't renounce it. That's the fucking difference, right? Now, what happened also? Bin Salman murdered a U.S. journalist in Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA found out about it and showed the president of the United States, look, it was Bin Salman. What did the United States do? Jack shit. Because it takes more than blood to get the United States to do anything. Because oil is thicker than blood, and money is more important than blood. Israel. Oh, oh my God. All right. This is a taboo subject and a fucking half, right? Because um, you could talk shit about Syria. You could talk shit about Saudi Arabia. You could talk shit about radical Islam. Talk about Israel, you could get in trouble. Now, does that make me an anti Semite? Fuck no. People know I'm not. I speak out against good and evil. I mean, evil, really, right? I don't have anything to say about the good people. Good people are good people. But I talk about the the wrong of the world, the evil of the world. And when we talk about Israel, we're talking about the government. I don't know the people. I don't have to be there to know what the hell's going on. They make it pretty obvious, for people that want to use that argument. Oh, you have to be there to know it. I didn't have to be at the Pentagon to know a plane hit the Pentagon. People that were there saw it, right? So I'm going by the residents of Israel and Palestinians, right? So now we also got videos, we got testimonies, right? Now, Israel, which was fashioned under the Balfour Declaration, which was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, that announced that it viewed with favor the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then back then, which was, an Ottoman Empire or Ottoman region, I'm sorry, with a small Jewish population. The letter was written by none other than Lord Rothschild, right? Arthur Balfour Rothschild, who was, by the way, a leader of the British Jewish community for the transition to the Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. That's how Israel was created. Now, Israel has been under attack by a number of different countries, Egypt, Jordan, right? All this. But it basically didn't learn from that. And they upped the ante and said, well, we're going to create a section of inside Israel where the Palestinian citizens are going to be like in a prison like setting in Gaza and the West Bank. We control the lighting, we control the water, we control the export and import part of these areas. Now, here you are, an Arab citizen in Israel that is, basically under the total control of Israeli soldiers, many of them Zionists, not all of them, that basically have been victims of brainwashing. They are victims too. They're victims of brainwashing, just like a Wahhabi terrorist is a victim. He's a victim of brainwashing. Yes, he's a murderer, he's a killer, he's a criminal, but always remember this and don't forget this. He's a victim of manipulation. He was taken advantage of. Just like a lot of these soldiers in the IDF, they're manipulating. Look, these people hate you. Well, guess what? That feeds off to Palestinians. They teach their children too. Look, the Jews hate you, and so this repetition of hatred and violence never ends. Now, it's not justified. I'm not justifying the summarily imprisonment of these people, and groups like Hamas pop up, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, right? Oh, these are terrorist groups. I agree. Yes, they are terrorist groups. At the same time, the IDF can be seen as a terrorist group because what is terrorism? According to the definition, terrorism is when a group use violence as a means for a geopolitical goal. Now, when we come to Israel and their preconceived enemies, is it Syria? Yes. Is it now? Sometimes. Is it Saudi Arabia? No. Is it Bahrain? No. Is it the United Arab Emirates? No. Is it Egypt? No. Is it Jordan? No. It is Iran, Lebanon, and Syria, and has been for decades. But wait a minute. These three countries were socialist Arab countries led by Shia minority. They're not behind the essence of Wahhabism. They're not behind the essence of Al Qaeda. They're not behind the essence of Islamic State. Why would Israel hate these groups? Why would the West hate these groups? Why does the national media like Fox lie that Iran is the greater exporter of terrorism? Where's Al Qaeda coming from? Where's Abu Sayyaf coming from? Where is Islamic State coming from? Where's Al Qaeda Arabian Peninsula coming from? Not from Iran. But the essence of Wahhabism from Saudi Arabia. Why are we not at war with that country? Well, I just told you why. Well, over the years, Iran and Israel have been battling back and forth. Iran has their own problems, especially with the mullahs, right? But overall, the Iranians have a great people, just like Israel has a great people. But overall, their government is a piece of shit. I'm not backing down from saying that Benjamin Netanyahu, Isaac Herzog, and the war cabinet under Benjamin Netanyahu, such as Itamar Ben-Gvir, Yosef Strouk, and Bezalel Smotrich, are Kahanists who are no different than members of Al Qaeda. They are similar. They believe in a caliphate. They believe that Israel should be Jewish, and that the Greater Israel Project should be expanded to Saudi Arabia's, Iraq, the Sahel, right? They should expand. So it's funny because when you have evangelical Christians, the fanatic kind, when you have, religious Israelis, the fanatics like the Kahanists, right? Then you have the Zionists, and then you have, these Wahhabis, right? They hate each other, consider themselves mortal enemies, yet they share so much in common. From their inward beliefs, even to their outward appearances and beliefs. And it just seems that Israel is trying to push the United States into a war with Iran, a war that we cannot basically afford right now. But it didn't stop for the United States to get involved in Syria, didn't stop for the United States to get involved with Iraq, didn't stop for the United States to get involved with Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan was a far different reason than, Syria and, Iraq. It's fucking fascinating. Now, you may have heard from the United States point of view, specifically under the Trump administration, that there's a project called Project 2025. Now, I don't think Trump cares about this project, but the people under it, people like, corporations like the Heritage Foundation, which are driving force behind the evangelical youth community inside the Trump administration, trying to get you to hate immigration, trying to get you to hate Islam, trying to get you to hate any ideology that poses against evangelical Christianity in their definition. Well, the Project 2025 document, much of the document section on foreign policy, outlines how the United States need to adopt a burden-sharing approach when it came to the collective defense of its allies that I just named, right? Other countries should have a more prominent role in, say, sustaining their militaries rather than Washington providing security assistance. The document even states, quote, that U.S. allies, must take far greater responsibility for their conventional defense, end quote. Many conservatives within the Trump administration and outside of it criticized the large amount of military aid that the United States provides to Ukraine as it continues to fight Russia in a Cold War style theater. But Project 2025 says a lot to say about the Middle East. For example, when it comes to Israel, it states that one U.S. ally that isn't expected to pay for its own defense is Israel. Surprised? It receives several mentions throughout Project 2025, which argues the need for continued U.S. support for the country, its military, and its economy. The document states, quote, sustained support for Israel even as America empowers Gulf partners, such as Saudi Arabia, to take responsibility for their own coastal, their own air and missile defense, both individually and working collectively, end quote. The Democrats don't like this idea. They, in turn, they sent delegates to Israel showing that, yes, we're still allies, but we don't agree that we should be paying for your defense. But again, the party platform of the Trump administration shunned a demand for progressives to include an arms embargo on Israel that was shot down. The document also states that it has an ironclad commitment to the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding, which is, in essence, an Israeli-U.S. agreement signed by then President Barack Obama, which gave Israel $3.8 billion in U.S. military annually, which ran out in 2018. What does it say about Saudi Arabia? Well, the Project 2025 document states that any future Republican administration, currently Trump, to continue building upon the 2020 normalization agreements signed between Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan. The agreements were brokered by Trump, and they established diplomatic relations between Israel and the Arab countries. The Heritage Foundation wants a Republican president to broker normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, in which they did. That was under the Trump administration, which was seen as a miraculous thing. I remember when it happened. So here you have Saudi Arabia, Syria, the United States, Israel, right at the center, the four allies, all have been a detriment to their opposition, all have been a detriment to hegemony in the region because they're all involved with conflicts of some kind. Some of them covert, illegal operations, I just named. And here you have four governments which are evil by its own essence, that don't represent the needs of the people. So it's easy to become a Nick Fuentes and say, I hate Jews because they're representative of the government. I'm not a representative of the US government. I don't vote. I think it's immoral to do so because I don't believe in killing people for for the need to advance a geopolitical goal. Imagine killing 10 people to get to a Hamas operative and then claiming that you have the moral authority. Imagine killing 1,000 people using your sanctions on a country in Yemen and claiming that you are uh, a great representative of the Prophet Muhammad in Saudi Arabia. Imagine slaughtering minorities in coastal provinces in Syria, the Druze, the Alawites, the Christians, then being allowed into the United States. And because you wear a suit, think that you have moral ambiguity. You're an evil piece of shit. Now, I believe all of this has a reverberating effect. I do believe that Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in Syria, Al Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al Qaeda in the Sahel will form together and attack inside the United States, will draw a war to the countries that are no bearing to terrorism, which will be Lebanon and Iran, which would basically acquiesce to the wishes of the foreign policy guidelines in Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States. The bigger picture. I had a friend tell me there's nothing wrong with looking at the big picture. It's just that you've been staring too long at the big picture. I believe that's what I'm doing. I believe I've been droning on way too much. But I have legitimate concerns about the welfare of humanity. And I believe with all the domestic and stressful conditions that we're suffering here in the United States, to have a terrorist attack happen would basically crush us to paralyzation. We wouldn't be able to fight against a war in response to a terrorist attack. I believe that the loudest voices will be the people who are racist against Muslims, and that they'll win out, and that the Trump administration, which is getting crushed in the Pew polls, will have a resounding effect and give what his supporters want, which is basically an end to immigration completely, will then start up a new war, which would help the economy later on. But would it? If we have a forced expulsion of immigrants from the country, I'm not just talking about illegal ones, I'm talking about immigrants in general, this will shut off the workforce, it will paralyze it, and we will suffer even more. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I wish I did. And I wish I didn't have these thoughts in my head. I see the danger for what it is. I report it as is. I'm not persuaded by ideology. I give you the news as you deserve it because I believe in empowering the people. Now, I'll also admit that I'm a pessimist and a hopeless one, but I got to have some hope in doing some good to some people. And if this is my part of doing good in empowering the people with information, because information is power, then all right, I could live with that. But it just drives me crazy and to the point of, really becoming deliberating to the point, really deliberating to think that we're going to do nothing. And we become so desensitized to the world around us, desensitized to violence, and emboldened by our transparent, belief for entertainment, that the real enemy is us. It's not Israel. It's not Saudi Arabia. It's not Syria. It's not the government. It's us, because we refuse to do anything about it. But do we deserve it? No, of course not. But if we don't do anything about it, can we have the right to complain? Well, like I said, I'm just one man, and maybe I got it wrong. Maybe there won't be a terrorist attack. Maybe Ahmed al-Shara is reformed. Maybe I'm wrong about a lot of things, but that's what we'll see in the future, right? And I'm not moved by much. I wish I was. I'm so like stoic emotionally, but we deserve a better future. We do, than what we're giving ourselves currently. What is it going to take to stop looking at each other like we're the enemy? I mean, we look at how we treat each other. That in itself is a fucking crime. Wouldn't you agree? Don't you fucking agree? If you hate each other because he's a Muslim, if you hate each other because he's white, if you hate each other because he's a Democrat or a Republican, if you hate him because he's a man or a transitioner or a cisgender or homosexual, God's sakes, man, everyone is a victim of propaganda and brainwashing. Everybody, including me. But we're still human. We still feel love and pain. And we deserve to treat each other a whole lot better, including myself. I have a lot of work to do. But we got to make the effort, or else it's too late. Thank you very much for hearing me rant along and to do these videos. And I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Take care.